Professor Richard Muller is a guy who is skeptical about global warming. In fact, he got famous for this. A couple of years back, he published, statements saying, hey, you know what? All this data all the scientists claim that they have about global warming, I'm not buying it, okay? And now you have to understand, he's a respected scientist. He's not a kook. He's from Berkeley. He's been there a long time. And he said at the time, 3 years ago, or he said now about what he thought back then. 3 years ago, I identified problems in previous climate studies, in my mind, through doubt on the very existence of global warming. All right, fantastic. Okay, so that's really interesting. Of course, the people who were very interested by this were the Koch brothers. They wound up giving him $150,000, and he got funding from other sources as well. He collected 10 of the top scientists in the country, and they're going to finally show, it's global warming, it's a crock, Al Gore made it up. Get out of here. One of them has a Nobel Prize in physics. His name is Saul Perlmutter, and so these guys know what they're doing. And so they studied all of this, and here's what Professor Muller concluded at the end of his studies, funded by the Koch brothers, who are very much against the idea of global warming. Of course, since they pollute the environment, they have a vested interest in that, and they like to buy people like Professor Muller, except in this case, it was a fail. Because Muller comes out and says, last year, following an intensive research effort involving a dozen scientists, I concluded that the global warming was real, and that prior estimates of the rate of warming were correct. I am now going a step further. Humans are almost entirely the cause. Koch brothers, oops. You like apples? How you like them apples? Turns out the guy had principles. He was genuinely skeptical before. He did the research. In fact, he got the best scientists in the world to do the research with your money. And it turns out they're like, oh boy, is that real? And is it caused by man? You betcha. He said human activity is, quote, the most straightforward explanation for why this happened. Now, to give you a sense, over the last 250 years, our Earth land temperatures have warmed by 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. That is very significant, and it has continued to accelerate over time. Over the last 50 years, we warmed by 0.9 degrees Celsius. That doesn't seem like a lot to you. You're wrong. That is a dramatic change. It affects the water in the air. It affects the severity of storms, and we're just getting warmed up, and it's getting worse and worse every time. And so Professor Muller concludes in the end, call me a converted skeptic. So, absolutely, global warming exists, absolutely done by man. He called it a total turnaround on his position, and finally added, these findings are stronger than those of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the United Nations group that defines a scientific and diplomatic consensus on global warming. So I love this. He took Koch money, did a real analysis, and came out even stronger than the group of top scientists in the world working on this issue, saying it is definitely caused by man. So Koch brothers, what now?